Starting soap making can be a daunting task. In the beginning, there are so many opinions and information. It can be completely overwhelming because likely none of these opinions or information sources agree on what the right process is. You're kind of left on your own to sort through and figure out what's important and what isn't. But lots of people make getting started with soap making so much harder than it has to be by making one simple mistake. They think they need to start with non-milk soaps. My name is Shanna DeHogue. I own Big Red Barn Goat Milk Soaps and Sassy Soapers Soap Making membership. And today we're going to give you a little tip on how to get started with soap making the easy way. We've heard so many people say, I'm going to start learning to make soap, but I want to leave the fancy milk soaps for later. Those seem complicated and hard, or maybe they've done some research, they've watched some other people make milk soaps and it seems very complicated, and they feel like they need to learn how to make soap first and then move on to the milk soaps. But that actually isn't the case. It actually is much easier and safer to do it the other way around and start with the milk soaps. Milk soaps are the perfect way to get started, but there's one trick that you need to know that makes making milk soaps your best answer for getting started with your first batches of soap. And that tip is you need to freeze the milk. How does this work? It's actually really simple. You just freeze the milk, liquid milk, in advance in an ice cube tray. Then, when you're ready to use it, you pop the cubes out of the ice cube tray and weigh the amount of frozen milk that way. Each cube is going to weigh about 1 ounce, but you always want to weigh the total amount of milk just to be sure you've got exactly the right amount. Now, one pro tip is with making milk soaps and goat milk soap in particular, you can overshoot the milk just a little bit. That's okay. It introduces just a little bit of super fatting to your soaps, and that's okay, especially if you're using our recipe. Our recipe is designed to take a little bit of that. When you're measuring milk by the cubes, it's hard to get an exact weight. You're probably just going to be in the ballpark. So you want to measure the milk so that it's whatever the amount you need plus a little bit. So if you have that amount plus 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 ounces, that's totally okay. The lye has to be very exact. But if you need to overshoot the milk because it's in cubes and you can't shave off a little bit to try to make it just exact, that's totally okay. You can do that. The next step is you're going to sprinkle the lye over the frozen goat milk cubes. Now, this is kind of a fun process to watch. The lye gives off heat as it gets wet, but because it's going to start to stick to the cubes, and because it's stuck to a cube, it doesn't really get too hot. That cube is going to keep the temperature down. It will melt the milk eventually. So you're going to want to stir this bowl just a little bit. Just make sure the lye is stuck to all the cubes. And then as it starts to melt, you're just going to kind of keep moving it a little bit. You don't need to stir it constantly, but just kind of go back to stirring it maybe every once in a while in between the other things you're doing with your soap making. Once it is melted, if you've been stirring it occasionally and not just letting it sit, your milk will be a light cream color with the lye incorporated. Now, how is this beneficial? When lye gets into water, so if you were pouring the lye into water in normal soap making, it heats up. And this creates just kind of a time issue because it heats way up and you can't use it when it's that hot. You have to wait for it to cool off. And that's just a time suck, that you have to wait for this thing to cool off and you're just stuck waiting then. Another thing that happens is when lye gets in water, it gives off a bunch of lye fumes. And in order to be safe, you don't want to breathe those, you don't want to be around those. You either have to be working under a stove vent, you have to be near a window with a fan running, or you need to be working outside. And all of those are just pesky and hard. With milk soaps and with sprinkling the lye over the cubes, the temperature is kept down and there just aren't the fumes. Now, there's just a tiny little bit of fumes. If you get super close, you can actually smell it. But if you need to test this, and if you're thinking, no, I've watched too many soap making videos. That can't possibly be true. Give this a try. Freeze your milk, sprinkle the lye over it, mix it, and then smell it. Lye fumes smell like rotten eggs. And for us, you have to get super close, like stick your nose in the bowl, which you really don't want to do. But you have to get really close to it to smell anything at all. There's just the tiniest, tiniest bit of fumes. And if that makes you nervous still, that there's still a little bit there, just run a fan in the room that you're working in, and that will dissipate any of the fumes that might be there, which there really are not that many, just a tiny, tiny bit. Another benefit of doing it this way is that the milk doesn't scald. If you have watched people make milk soaps, the huge challenge is sprinkling the lye into liquid milk. And they have to go super, super slow because if they put too much lye in the milk, like we said, it's going to heat up and it will heat up so much that it will scald the milk. And the milk will be this bright orange, nasty color and smell gross. So they have to be super, super slow. Again, it's a time suck and it's also very difficult, very challenging. When working with frozen goat milk, that's not the case. You don't have to worry about that at all. It isn't going to scald. You could just go back to stirring it every once in a while, and you know that it's going to stay that nice cream color and be about 85 to 90 degrees when it's done. The process of making milk soaps is so much simpler this way. Not only do you not have the challenge of trying to get the lye into the liquid milk, but you also don't have the fumes and the heating up and the time wasting and all the stuff that happens when you're working with lye and distilled water. Milk soaps become absolutely the easiest and the safest and the best place for beginning soap makers to start. The process is just so much simpler. You can work in your kitchen, on your counter, because you don't have to worry about the fumes. You don't have to have your lye outside or on your stove or wherever. You can just work with it all right here. It's very handy and very simple. As long as you are stirring your lye and milk cubes, while it's melting, as long as you're stirring them occasionally, you know that it's not going to overheat and it's not going to scald. You're not going to end up with that nasty orange milk that you can't use. You have to throw out and start over. You save time. You don't have to waste time waiting for the lye water to cool down. You don't have to waste time trying to get your lye into the liquid milk and not cause a scalding disaster. It's just a whole lot easier and safer. In our goat milk soap making class, I hear this all the time. People will say, I thought making soap was difficult and intimidating, but this process is so much easier. And then another person said, freezing the goat milk seems so much more doable than anything I've seen before. I feel like I can try this safely. And this is the beauty of this process, because with the lye sprinkled over goat milk cubes, frozen cubes, the lye reaction, it's still happening, but it's much more under control. It feels like something that a new soap maker has control of, and it's not, fuming and heating up and all of that. It's much more under control. It's much more predictable. And when that's the case, then a new soap maker is going to have more confidence that they can control this reaction. And when you feel like you have more confidence, then there's a greater chance that you will actually give soap making a try. When you're watching someone's process and it seems complicated and very, very like you have to know exactly what you're doing or it's going to go wrong or something's going to be dangerous. It doesn't have to be that way. If you feel like you can handle it, you can control it, it's going to be safe, then there's a better chance that you will actually give soap making a try. So, do you want to see this process from beginning to end? We have a goat milk soap making class where we do exactly that. We show you step by step every little thing you need to know, every little thing you need to do to get your first batch of goat milk soap created. You'll be able to see the process. You will also be able to ask any questions. This is a live class and we have a live Q&A at the end of the class, and we would love to answer any of the soap making questions that you have. I know if you're watching this video, you have probably watched other soap making videos. You've probably done a fair amount of watching and looking, but you've also probably done a fair amount of wondering about, well, what about this? Or what if I do with what about this? Or what about using this thing or whatever? We want to make sure you have all your soap making questions answered by the end of the class. So I would really encourage you to check out our class. The link is in the comments below this video. We would love to show you the process, show you exactly how it's done. You'll have the recipe as well, and then answer any questions you've got so that you can feel confident that you have the easiest and the safest method for making your first batch of soap. We would love to see you there.